Chris be. Gatal na to pun.
ada Muhammad Cup. Ada Muhammad Cup. Kenapa be? Kenapa kau nanti? Ada Muhammad Cup.
for draws today. Let's take a look at what that does to the standings. Tanya, based on that incredible prediction in that final game, what does that do to the overall standings? What are we looking forward to after the rest day?
It's closer than where we started the day, right? Because Ana Muzichuk had a point lead over the rest of the field. Now it comes down to a half a point over Vaishali. And what a comeback story this has been for Vaishali, similar to what we saw at the candidates in Toronto, where Vaishali went on this insane 5 away.
We're live with Tavakhir Sindarov after his 7th round draw against Anish Giri, one of only 2 draws in this event. It seemed to go a little slower than usual, but prep was in your favor. You're on the clock. Tell us about this game.
Yeah, today I think we played a very nice game. Probably some moment I have a good advantage, but the position which I go is looks like from first should be winning, but when I think a lot, I understand he's surviving everywhere, and what can I say? Okay, draw is not bad today, and tomorrow I have a rest day.
You pushed until the end. At some point, it looked like it was going to go until only 2 kings were left on the board. Did you know that this is theoretically drawn, or were you still having some hope for a result?
Yeah, actually, from first, I think I have some small chances because we have one more pawn. Let's say if there is only 1 pawn, I understand it's theoretically draw, but from first I think I have some small chances, but then when I analyze, I think he was surviving in every position with the only moves, and yeah, and moves was really not so hard, so I think a lot to do some tricks, but nothing here.
I think this is the longest you spent thinking in a game, which is different for you in this candidates. How was that, spending 20 plus minutes on a move?
Actually, yeah, I think today probably a lot after go to the same game. Yeah, I don't know. From first, it looks like for me winning, and I really played too fast. Maybe I just need to take time at some moment and play a little bit better move, but which is for me really surprised. And yeah, okay, it's not bad. I'm fine.
You said that you think you play too fast. Do you think this has become kind of a natural reaction to your opponents being in time trouble against you and you wanting to put pressure on them by playing fast?
In general, yeah, I really want to do some small pressure, but today we got theoretical position after move 20, and in my opinion I cannot do any pressure from time because it's not so hard to do let's say 20 moves in this time trouble, so yeah, I don't know actually. Okay, it's not bad result, I'm just too tired today.
And when your opponents are thinking so long, Hikaru an hour, and today even Giri was behind you so much, don't you get bored? I remember seeing you in World Cup pacing up and down. Here we have photos of you lying on the couch, sitting there. What goes through your head in these long hours, for an hour, not sitting at the board waiting for your...
That's all. I'm always try to calculate everything over the board, but if my opponent thinks too much, I really like to sit somewhere and think about some ideas in the position.
So it's always thinking about chess?
Not always, but normally, yes.
And final question, we're halfway in the tournament. You have a rest day tomorrow.
Yeah, first I need to sleep very well, and probably next.
Imagine being able to build anything just by thinking about it. Meet Base 44 Direction. From tools built for one to platforms ready for many. From passion projects to enterprise-grade systems.
I train my communication skills for 15 minutes a day. Now my boss asks me
Listening to you before you even finish your sentence.
twice. I didn't see that happen to me at all.
Yeah.
Want to know why? Because I trained for it.
Here's the brutal truth. If people forget what you say the moment you stop talking, you didn't communicate and you just filled the silence.
Yeah.
You're trying to sound confident, but your delivery doesn't hold attention.
So it's just
my personality? No, that's nonsense.
Okay.
People aren't bored because of who you are. They're bored because no one taught you how to speak with presence. Communication isn't a personality trait, it's a skill. And if you don't train it, it gets weak.
Yeah.
What you need is communication reps. The solution is the charisma training, not theory, real communication training. In 30 days, you stop being forgettable and start being magnetic.
Yeah.
Your voice holds attention.
Yeah.
Your words land. People actually listen and remember. Stop being the person who gets talked over. Become the one people look at when you speak. Take the 3-minute quiz, follow the plan for 15 minutes a day, and unlock the communicator you were supposed to be.
Moscow, October 15th, 1985. The game you are about to see is, without a doubt, the best game ever played in a World Chess Championship. And not only that, according to a Chess.com ranking of the greatest games in history, it is number 4. The stage is the iconic Tchaikovsky Concert Hall in Moscow, where the reigning world champion at the time, 34-year-old Anatoly Karpov, must defend his world title. At this point, the match was tied 7.5 to 7.5 in a 24-game match, so it was extremely important who would take the lead. Chess player, writer, and coach Alexander Nikitin described it like this. Karpov walked onto the stage with that energy. He opens with 1e4. His challenger was a 22-year-old named Garry Kasparov, who replies with c5, the Sicilian defense. The game continued with knight to f3, after which Black responds with e6, with the idea that once the center opens with the usual moves, Black will continue with knight to c6, choosing the Taimanov variation of the Sicilian defense. To face this, Karpov used to jump with the knight to b5, threatening to enter d6 with check. So, to prevent that, Kasparov pushes the pawn to d6, after which White continues with c4 to form what is known as the Maroczy bind, a pawn structure that is very important in chess theory. Now the game continues with the knight jumping to f6, attacking the e4 point, which is defended with knight to c3, after which the black pawn advances to a6, chasing the knight away from b5. One option is to retreat it to d4, but the main option is to retreat it all the way back to a3, because the knight will later be rerouted through c2. Now we arrive at one of the most important moments of the game. Let us understand why. The normal plan for Black in this position is to continue with bishop to e7 and castle. But let us notice something key. This Maroczy bind structure is used to control the d5 square firmly and to prevent Black from advancing the pawn to d5. Because if Kasparov achieves that, it will break open the center and free the position. If Black does not manage to carry out this pawn break under good conditions, then White will start gaining more and more space, and over time, White ends up strangling Black. But then, right there, something unexpected happens. Kasparov pushes the pawn to d5 anyway. It is a decision as risky as it is brave, and in a moment we will understand as the Kasparov Gambit. For years, the story was that this gambit came to Andrasha Doryan, Kasparov's coach, during a tram ride in Russia, and that he showed it to him. But much later, Kasparov denied that story in his book, saying that the idea came to him months, that the idea was ready to be put into action. White must accept the challenge and begins by capturing with the c-pawn. Black recaptures with the pawn, and now Karpov, and because the knight on c6 is now attacked, it jumps to b4. Now, this is game 16 of the match. Earlier, in game 12, Kasparov had also used the same gambit, and Karpov chose to play bishop to c4 in this very position. And after a series of precise, well-prepared moves, Kasparov managed to win his pawn back, equalize the position, and secure a quick draw, which is a very good result in a world championship match when you are playing Black. So for this new encounter, Karpov changes course. He does not choose that move. Instead, he develops the bishop to e2. And that is why I said this was such a risky decision. Well, let us see what ended up happening. Kasparov can now recover the pawn, but if Black does, at some point the bishop will go to f3, where it will be perfectly placed to put pressure on the queen side. Black would be close to equality, but with very few options to create active play. So Kasparov refuses to regain his pawn and quickly continues the gambit by developing the bishop to c5. White continues by castling, and black castles as well. After that, the bishop goes to f3, clinging to the defense of the pawn. But by doing this, white also stops defending the d3 square, so Kasparov develops the bishop to f5, gaining control of that point for a future knight invasion. The game follows the normal paths of development. The bishop develops to g5, black moves the rook to the open file, and white plays queen to d2, connecting the rooks. Black pushes on the queen side with b5, and then the rook goes to d1. Clearly, Karpov has defended his extra pawn on d5 very well. But it is not all advantages, because now Kasparov jumps with the knight to d3, and this will become the most important piece on the entire board. Let us see what happens. For the moment, black is threatening to play b4, attacking both knights. So, to prevent this, Karpov simply retreats the knight to b1. Now the intentions of this bishop are questioned with h6, but it retreats to h4. Kasparov continues with b4, attacking the knight, which goes to a4, in turn attacking the bishop, and the bishop retreats to d6. Black is threatening, for example, to sacrifice the bishop on h2. After the king captures, the knight would jump to g4 with check, and at the same time, it would uncover the queen's attack on the undefended bishop on h4, winning the material back in the last piece, bringing the queenside rook to c8. And now we reach the second most important moment of the game, so pay close attention, because here we will see the difference between the best players in the world and ordinary players. Let us explain it step by step. Karpov continued with b3, and what is the idea behind this move? Well, the idea is to retreat the knight to b2 and try to drive away the strong black knight on d3. And if white manages to do that, black will lose the compensation it has for white's extra pawn on d5. So Kasparov cannot allow this. And how is he going to stop it? Well, he pushes the pawn to g5. A good move, but wait a moment. And why does this move prevent white from playing knight to b2? Well, let us see it. If white decides to do it anyway, it is a mistake, because black would continue by trading the knight. After the queen recaptures, black would push the pawn to g4. And it turns out this bishop has no square to retreat to except e2. After that, black continues with rook to c2, and that is a double attack, both on the queen and on the bishop. So black would win material, and very likely the game later on as well. That is why, and let us go back, this pawn push to g5 prevents the positional threat of knight to b2. Now, continuing with the game, it is Karpov's move. Let us see how he responds. Well, he trades bishops, with the idea that after black recaptures with the queen, white will play g3 and renew the threat of knight to b2. But why does this move now renew the threat of knight to b2? Do you remember the earlier line we just saw? Black pushed the pawn to g4. The bishop had nowhere to go except e2, and then the rook came to c2, creating a double attack and winning material. Well, that no longer exists, because now, when the bishop is attacked, it can retreat to g2 instead of being forced back to e2. And because of that, the threat of knight to b2 is alive again. Now it is Kasparov's turn, so he must stop this idea once again. And how does he do it? Well, he does it by retreating the knight to d7. This is master-level chess. And the question comes up again. Why does this move now prevent knight to b2? Well, let us see it, because white would fall into a very sophisticated trap. If Karpov keeps pushing their idea, then black has the spectacular queen to f6, attacking the knight on b2 twice. And even if white captures the knight on d3, it does not save them, because then the bishop recaptures on d3, attacking the rook on f1, and also hitting the bishop on f3. So white has no choice. If they do not want to lose material, they must capture that bishop. But after that, the knight jumps to e5. That is why it first retreated to d7, and now it is attacking both the queen and the bishop. But the real problem is not this bishop. The real problem is that the white queen is about to be captured. But how is that possible if it looks like the queen has so many squares to go to? Well, let us go through them one by one and see why she is trapped. Notice that if the queen goes to the e file, black captures the bishop on f3 with check. And at the same time, the rook's line opens up against the queen and she is lost. So she cannot go there. Next, she cannot go to the c file either, and she cannot capture the pawn on a6 because it is defended by the opposing queen. She also cannot go to b5, and she cannot escape along that diagonal. So, in the end, only two squares remain, d2 or d4. However, in both cases, the knight captures the bishop, and then the queen is captured right after. This was the little trap Kasparov had prepared a few moves earlier when he retreated the knight to d7 to stop the knight to b2.
Mi trabajo es fácil porque uso ClickUp. Así es como hago un seguimiento de todas mis tareas. Empiezo volcando todo lo que tengo que hacer en una vista de lista. Luego, asigno una prioridad y una fecha de entrega para mantener todo bajo control. Creo estados personalizados para organizar mi progreso exactamente como quiero. Me gusta añadir el campo de elementos de acción para que la IA muestre próximos pasos. Tengo a mis compañeros de equipo observadores. ClickUp facilita el trabajo, los proyectos personales y las empresas multimillonarias. Crea tu espacio de trabajo gratis en el enlace de abajo.
Make it a habit. 7 minutes of Tai Chi every morning, all the way for 1 month. In 1 week, you'll feel better. In 2 weeks, you look better. In 1 month, your wife won't believe your results. Here's a Tai Chi workout plan, made for men over 50. These beginner-friendly exercises take just 7 minutes a day. Tai Chi is the best medicine for men over 50, and it's a key to long-lasting health and vitality. It's more than a workout. It's a game changer for your life and longevity. Just open the app and follow along.
But white is being led by Anatoly Karpov, and he is not going to fall for this trap. Even if it looks spectacular to us, for them, it is routine. So let us go back. He does not retreat the knight to b2. Instead, he retreats the bishop to g2. The idea is that the bishop is no longer hanging, and at the same time, the f3 square is defended again, which brings the positional threat of knight to b2 back to life. But now, for Kasparov, it is much easier to stop it. He simply plays queen to f6, taking control of that square. Black is winning the strategic battle, and white will be stuck with this powerful knight planted in the middle of the position. Karpov now faces a torturous defense. Trying to free his knight, he decides to play a3, but black does not capture. Instead, Kasparov defends by pushing a5. The pawns are then exchanged, and we arrive at another one of the most incredible moments of the game. Anatoly Karpov, playing white, in the middle of a world championship match, on move 26, is practically in zugzwang, almost unable to move anything. The two rooks cannot move to the only squares they have available, because the knight would capture them. On the other hand, this knight, as we can see, has no squares to go to. And if we look closely, the other knight has no available squares either. Moving the bishop or moving the king to h1 does not really make sense, so that leaves the queen. But notice that she cannot go to the c file. She cannot go to the e file either. She cannot go to f4. She cannot go to b2. So the only active move, and the only one that does not lose immediately, is queen to a2. That is exactly what he played, because it is the only active thing he can do. Karpov is known for slowly suffocating his opponents until they resign. But in this game, he is being outplayed by his greatest rival, Garry Kasparov, on Karpov's own positional territory. And once Kasparov sees that white is suffocating, he begins improving his position little by little, and quietly retreats the bishop to g6. Karpov still has almost nothing to do. If, for example, White plays knight to d2. The rook comes into e2, pinning it. And at the same time, black attacks the f2 point 3 times, giving black an even bigger advantage. So Karpov chooses not to do this, and let us go back. Instead, he pushes the pawn to d6, giving it back, hoping black will capture it and at least allow him to free his pieces. But in this game, the d-pawn was the last thing Kasparov cared about. Instead, he keeps improving his position and pushes g4. White, with very little room to maneuver, moves the queen back to d2, this time threatening h6, but that is easily defended by stepping the king up to g7. Nikitin writes, "It was painful to watch how the world champion, playing white, in a middle game with a sound extra pawn and a solid pawn structure, was unable to find a useful move." And now we arrive at the climax of the game. If Karpov keeps shuffling the queen between a2 and d2, which is practically the only thing white can do, then black will simply keep improving the position little by little. Kasparov will continue with h4, then h5 knows this perfectly well. He does not want to suffer that agonizing ending, so he decides to open the position with f3, trying to activate his pieces. But there is something important we must understand here. Opening the position always favors the side that is better developed and more active. And in this case, there is no doubt that black's pieces are far more active, so this white king has very little hope. Let us see what happens. And now, let us start paying attention to the tactical themes around the f2 square, because that is what will decide the game. Kasparov senses this immediately and, very precisely, brings the knight to f6, with the idea of capturing on g4 and aiming at f2. Karpov defends the pawn with rook to f4, but then the knight jumps to e4, increasing the pressure and bringing that tactical theme to full force. A knight jumping into f2 is completely decisive, and there is no way to stop it. That is why, in a lost position and in total desperation, Karpov decides, in fact, it is the move the engine recommends. But even then, one of the knights still jumps into f2 with check. The rook captures it, and after that, the bishop that was hiding on g6 captures the queen on d3. The material balance is queen versus 2 knights. But Karpov, almost on inertia, keeps playing and moves the rook to d2, pinning the bishop. But now, in this tactical position and with a material advantage, Kasparov continues with total precision and finds a sequence of very strong moves. He starts by playing queen to e3. The bishop is captured, but then the black rook comes into c1, another powerful move. If white takes the queen, black takes the rook with check and then wins the other rook as well. After that sequence, black keeps his advantage and remains clearly better. So Karpov continues by playing knight to b2, and then the e1, and mate follows in 2 moves. So, in desperation, Karpov now moves the other knight to d2. And at this point, I think we see the only inaccuracy by Kasparov in the entire game. If he had played rook to e2, mate on the next move would have been unavoidable. But he did not see it. Instead, he captured the rook on d1, with the idea that once the knight recaptures, he will then play rook to e1. Kasparov wrote, "Earlier too, I had succeeded in carrying earlier creations on the chessboard can compare with this 16th game as regards to the grandiosity of the overall conception." And here Karpov resigned, because after knight to f1, the exchanges would follow, and it would be checkmate. Now, if you love the Karpov versus Kasparov battles, and you want to see how the match ended, and especially the drama of the final game, I tell you the whole in the next video and in the next chapter of the story. Imagine being able to build an app with your name on it, just by thinking about it. Meet Base 44, a complete AI creation platform. Describe what you want, and watch it take shape.
Saan mo kukunin? Sa ilog ko. Ito.
Ayan.
Ito. Ano, pipiliin ko dito, pre. Kaya, ano, Saudi. Kasi ito transfer ko sa ano.
Saan mo transfer?
Dito sa STC ko. Saudi mo.
Saudi.
Ba't wala?
Anong Saudi?
Saudi Arabia pala.
Baka international transfer yan. Ano mo to?
Gano'n sana ko.
Dito mo kunin. Si Gads dito. Okay mo.
Eh, di ba nakalagay doon kanina ano? Yung information ng card. Yan, sa add money. Kaya dyan, debit.
Magkano yun mo?
Try muna natin yun. Yan sa'yo, 27 lang. Yun na 30.
Internet. Internet eh. Internet. Pagpapag internet eh.
Kailan ba tayo mag-ano?
Agreement yun.
Kailan ba tayo mag-ano? Ang nakaraan?
Agreement yung bayad mo.
Sige. Kano ba yung internet natin?
35. So, 27. 60.
Ayun yung 60.
Number mo. Pangalan ng account mo.
Ito.
Account mo.
Yung nasa side. Ito ang card number. Ito. Hindi ito ang card number.
O yung account number.
Ito. Mas lalong mahaba ito. Ito, account details.
Account number mo, mahal lang yun. Ito.
Ito, card number. Ito na.
Ito, account detail mo na. Payroll din sa'yo? Hindi ito mabang?
Payroll.
Hindi pwede dito. Payroll pala to. Payroll pala to, pre. Dapat kasi bank account.
Hmm? Pero lang to. Hindi to pwede transfer sa... Tapos, gawin nyo lang dito. Nakapag-transfer ako, dito ako nagpapadala.
Oo, pwede.
Hindi kasi siguro ito, at beneficiaries.